In this video, we are going to be talking about annotation and note-taking strategies. There are many strategies for annotation. These are just a couple of my favorites. Let's talk about chunking. Chunking helps with overall comprehension of a complicated text. Trying to consume the whole can get messy, and we often forget much of the material. Breaking it into pieces is best for us and the pie. So how do we do this? Start by identifying a slice or a small chunk of a larger text. Read this passage carefully. Mark 1 to 3 key details of your chunk. Combine those details and then decide what your chunk is mostly about. Here's an example. This is a short paragraph from a larger reading. I would have the larger article in front of me, but this is the chunk that I am going to dissect. I highlighted 3 thoughts out of this little chunk of text. 3 different teachers in his school assured me he was colorblind, his vision was perfect, and what he was saying about color. I'm then going to record these 3 passages that I took out of that larger chunk onto a separate document, maybe jot them down in a notebook. And then I would summarize what the main idea of this passage was based on those 2 to 3 key ideas I pulled out of that chunk of text. This is going to help me break down a larger reading into main ideas, and it's going to help me remember it far longer than I would if I just read it and tried to remember the entire article. Let's talk about talk-to-the-text style annotation. Talk to the text allows you to react, relate to, ask questions of, and interact with a reading. By doing so, you remember the key ideas of the text. Think of it like a grappling hook from the content to your brain. Here's a little sample text we're going to work with as I demonstrate this strategy for you. I made 4 little notes on here and I highlighted them and I marked them in track changes. I marked that first, the image of herself as a college student, and then off to the side I noted that she had a mental image of herself from college from a young age. It said Arkansas. I just marked Arkansas because that sprung a memory. I said my car broke down in Arkansas one summer. I marked Vanessa's parents divorced when she was 12, and I marked divorce can cause lots of stress. You can do this with track changes online or by hand with a highlighter and a pen. The most important rule of talk-to-the-text annotation is that it is not enough to just underline or highlight a sentence or a word. You must write yourself a brief note as to why it stood out to you. Any connection you have to that text is great. Comments, questions, weird memories, it all connects that reading to your brain. Let's talk about a couple of note-taking strategies. There are lots of ways to take notes while reading or watching a video. Here are just a couple of my favorites. Here's a sample of a note-taker chart. This is an adaptation of the note-taker chart in the SMC Reader and Handbook. If you're in my SMC section, you can use this or that sample from the handbook. The note-taker is a simple 3-column chart. Column 1, I read, saw, and heard, is where the bulk of your notes will go. Note facts, dates, and things you want to remember. Column 2 is connections. This is similar to talk to the text. This column may not be as full. Why do you want to remember that fact? Why did that information stand out to you? And column 3 is for the big takeaways. What are the 2 to 3 things you want to remember from that reading or that video? Here's a sample that I filled out for you. I read an article on Alcatraz Island, and in that first column, I read, saw, and heard. I wrote down 4 facts that I thought were interesting about my reading. In the second column, I made connections, just thoughts, muses, questions that I had, maybe things I wanted clarified. And in that third column, this helped me to understand, I wrote 2 takeaways that I had from this article. No one will ever expect you to remember every single detail of an article or a video or a presentation, but they will expect that you can say 2 to 3 intelligent things about that. That's what that helped me understand column is for. Let's talk about Cornell Notes. This is very similar to the note taker, and many of you have used this strategy before. Fill out the top with the correct information, so if you come back to these notes later, you know exactly what class they were for and when you did the work. The essential question might be assigned by your instructor, or you can write your own. It is what you want to gain from the reading, the video, or the presentation. The bulk of your facts, information, dates, etc. is recorded under notes. Questions is similar to the note taker connections. What needs clarification? What needs more research? The summary is a box at the bottom of the form. In 2 to 3 sentences, what are the main takeaways? Here's a sample I filled out for you using that same information that I used on Alcatraz Island. You can see I filled in the header, my name, the history, period 2, it's the date. Then I put my notes and my facts under notes, and I asked those questions under questions. Now, under questions, you can make comments as well as questions. These can be things you want to look up later, things that weren't covered in the original presentation, or anything that you might want to ask your instructor about later. And then in that bottom box for the summary, I just wrote a 1-sentence summary of this short piece on Alcatraz Island. Alcatraz Island has been considered scary and unapproachable from earliest records. There are many different ways to annotate and take effective notes. The most important thing is to find a style that works for you.